Hello, everyone. Shadab here, back again.
Hey everybody, it's your favorite storm chaser, Jamie here. Glad to be back with everyone today.
Hey, Jamie, Storm Chaser. Yeah, that reminded me. Weren't you on the tour to chase some storm last week?
Yeah, there was for those that don't know, I live in Delaware on the Middle Atlantic. Not too many tornadoes out here, but we did have a tornado watch last week. Did a little local storm chasing. Got close to a tornado warned storm area, but nothing actually materialized, which I guess is a good thing. For folks. Interesting little tidbit though. In all of the weather models and things that I look at, there is artificial intelligence in storm chasing. There's actually a model that's put out by the Colorado State University, and they actually use artificial intelligence to predict up to 8 days out in advance where severe weather could be. So it's never 100% right, but it's interesting nonetheless. It's usually pretty good, like 24 to 48 hours out. But AI is everywhere. I guess that's my mantra for today, even in the weather.
Yeah, and it's hopefully things making it's making things better actually. So what do you do like in chasing storms? I'm sure that you find the storm, you try to identify where the storm could occur or what the path is, and then you go there and you have it there, and then now it's chasing you, right? So what's the thrill of
Yeah,
it? Like,
hopefully it doesn't
think of-
chase you. You don't want it to chase you. That's for sure. Yeah, you go there to observe. Obviously you're watching the storm, you're observing it. You're there to help the National Weather Forecast or the National Weather Service determine their forecast and providing upstream warnings for wherever this is going to go. But a lot of it is just fascination with Mother Nature, because that's one thing you definitely cannot predict is which way the weather is going to turn out. Let alone 5 days in advance. But you can't even predict where a tornado is going to pop up 20 minutes out. So it's more of a passion kind of thing. But again, that's where my love of computers and technology and weather kind of come together, because you definitely need to know technology. And like I said already, the Colorado State University and a whole bunch of other things with National Severe Storm Labs and the Severe Prediction Center, they all use obviously computers, but they're leveraging artificial intelligence more and more every day.
Yeah, and what a week it was, Jamie. We had storms and thunders and rain and then earthquake. One of the rare event actually in New Jersey. It's like in
Yeah.
the last 240 years, one of the rare earthquake. And then we had eclipse today. What a
Yeah.
week.
Had a little bit of everything and waiting for the locust to come next.
Yeah, exactly. It was fun week. Quite a scary week as well. Well, okay, let's do a quick roundup, Jamie. Things happened while the elements were happening. AI world was still shaking all the time. Two new LLMs actually came up. I just wanted to quickly talk about that in the roundup. Databricks came out with the new LLM DBRX. It's a mixture of experts model, and mixture of experts is really kind of a arrangement or an architecture of an LLM where not all the parameters are used at one time. There are different segments of the LLM, and then depending on the need, some of those experts are invoked. So at certain point of time, not all the parameters, not entire model is actually engaged, which makes it faster. And then
I
of
was
course
about,
you can
yeah, I
scale up.
was just about to say, if they're not using all of those parameters, what's the impact? Is it impact on speed, impact on cost? Is it both?
Speed,
Like what's really in it for me if I was going to use the DBRX?
speed, and then of course the processing would be less, so it will impact the cost as well. So I think that is really the. But then it also has a beauty of this can scale up. So if required, and I think like different experts segments within the LLM exist. So it is a good architecture in a way that it can scale up and down. It can give you the speed as well as the quality as required.
Kind of sounds like it's a series of brains put together, like the mixture of experts.
Yep.
So do you need one brain or do you need 12 brains?
Yep, absolutely. And one of the famous mixture of experts model is, of course, from the Mistral, the Mixtral
Yep.
model. It's kind of become like the benchmark now. But Databricks, yeah, so they released this model, and this model is actually available as an open source, which means that its weight, architecture, I think even the data set, I believe, is available, and then it's available for Databricks customers using the API. And as usual, right, every other model that comes out every week, everybody claims to be a chat GPT killer. So, it of course claims that,
So
it beats the
killer of 3.5 or 4, or where's it lay
uh,
in that
four,
segment?
four is something that nobody talks about really. Chat GPT is like generally people refer to 3.5. And it does. This model actually it claims in with their own benchmark that it beats Chat GPT 3.5, not the 4. Um, and it has about like 36 billion parameters. The model itself has actually like 132 billion parameters, but because a mixture of expert at a certain time, it will use 36 billion parameters. So it's kind of use only part of it.
And
Um,
I'm assuming that's how it actually makes use of the model affordable and makes it fast, since it only needs to use a portion of those parameters at a time, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's really the strength of the mixture of experts model. So, and other thing is that of course this is the open source. Even the previous model which Databricks had come out, which I in fact want to ask about, what happened to Dolly, right? Remember Dolly? It was claimed that it was actually trained at a cost of $30 alone. I haven't heard much about it, but maybe it exists still. It was like Dolly 2 was just 12 billion parameters. So probably that's why it didn't pick up, because it wasn't as powerful compared to what GPT could do that time. But it was still, I think it was still adopted, and in the open source community, people still used it. So let's see how people
What the update may be.
yeah, exactly. And while this DBRX happened, another LLM also came along, which is by none other than the XAI by the Elon Musk. So Grok, you know, in the spirit of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, they have actually released the Grok 1.5 model, and this is, of course, this builds upon Grok 1, and which built upon the Grok 0 earlier. It has
Yeah, yeah,
314 parameters.
I was going to say. I mean, Grok 1 was released maybe about 6 months ago, give or take.
Yep.
So they're definitely seems like they're pushing the envelope on releases, which I guess is good for the industry as a whole. But you were saying it had what? How much of a context window?
I think 128K context window.
Okay,
Um,
so it's same as like GPT-4 Turbo these days.
Yes, I think 128K has kind of started becoming a little bit standard now with the advanced models, but it also has 314 billion parameters. But then again, this is also a mixture of expert, just like the DBRX that we talked about. So it doesn't use all of the billion parameters. It should be ideally be faster compared to what the 314 billion parameters generally would be. Um, Another interesting thing, it is open source with I think weight and architecture only. So I would say it's limited in terms of its open source. um, but interesting part of Grok is that because it's from the XAI, it actually uses the real-time data from the X, formerly
Yeah,
known as Twitter.
yeah, I was just saying that's a big differentiator. I mean, you hear it in the news all the time. You know, where are these models getting its data from? Is it quote unquote licensed? The big benefit for Grok is it's taking everything quote unquote that's on X, otherwise known as Twitter. So it's got that vast treasure trove of data to just use. I mean, you could argue whether or not that's good or not. Y- um, there's a lot of let's say misinformation in Twitter or X in that sphere. So I don't know if you've got a viewpoint if that's good or not in terms of the data that it's pulling in.
Yeah, I mean, like Twitter data. I mean, it's most of it is like okay. I mean, the reactions and tweets and but a lot of lies and hate and misconceptions and rumors. Now, I don't know how good is that data. Like, how would I use that in corporate terms, for example? So I don't think Grok is really targeting the corporate users. It's really on the social media. Probably it will remain there. They claim that it is it has humor. It is rebellious and all that, right? So
Yeah, it's
Um,
still got its quote unquote personality, so you're probably
yeah,
not going to use that personality for
exactly.
your corporate
And it
presence.
also claims that it is not woke. So it is supposed to be inclusive of all the political views, just like the X is supposed to be. So interesting, good start. It is an open source, but it is limited availability right now, Jamie. So unless you're a premium subscriber of X, you don't get to be even in the wait list. So there's going to be some time before it really comes out in the public hand and people can really test it.
Hmm.
What else going on?
So it seems like it was almost like a decade ago, but it was only last month. Um, there was this big uproar, and um, it was literally, what was it, maybe um, March 12th. Yeah, so almost a month ago. It seemed to take quote unquote the internet by storm, and I'm talking about Devin. Introduced by Cognition Labs. For those that don't know or maybe haven't heard too much about it, Devin is a AI that acts as a software engineer. Now, I'm going to give one caveat to everything I'm about to say. Um, Devin was announced, and there were a lot of cool videos on like demos, but I don't know anyone yet that's got their hands on Devin. So some of the things I'm going to say are just what we've seen from the um, the very cool demos that were actually put out there. But what Devin is, again, it's meant to be a software engineer. What does that really mean? Well, Devin's capable of coding, debugging, developing apps. It could actually learn and adapt from project to project, which means that it improves its efficiencies and capabilities. So think about the new software engineer that you might have just hired onto your team. That person's name is now Devin, or could be named Devin. And again, that's an artificial intelligent agent. So the thing that's really interesting about Devin is it's supposed to um, not replace your human engineer, but actually enhance the existing team to assist the other quote unquote human engineers on the team. And the the possibilities literally are endless in terms of what could be done with the use of Devin. And again, as I mentioned, it's about coding, testing, deploying, and learning from these things. But if you think about the real world applications, that could be everything from website creation to application development to software testing. So, if you go to the website, we'll put it in the show notes. There are these great demos that show what Devin is capable of. So it's very interesting, and I kind of equate it back to, we're seeing a lot of these autonomous agents and things that help with the orchestration and planning. This is that concept, maybe on steroids, or at least theoretically. We'll see it when people get more access to using it, but think about all those things I just mentioned, the testing, coding. Yeah, that's kind of like table stakes. And we've seen that already with the existing large language models. But some of these advanced features are really around like the planning and reasoning. Devin can quote unquote figure out how to build complex software. It can figure out how to break big projects up to smaller tasks before starting coding. And again, that's really important because Devin, or these artificial intelligent agents, are able to think through problems to determine what's the best path in terms of a solution. So again, maybe we devote a whole future session just going a little bit deeper dive into Devin, especially if and when we get closer to something getting released where I can get my hands on it and actually show you some things. But maybe this is in the broader context of when we talk about agents and what's out there in the market today. I don't know, Shadab, if you got
Yeah,
any thoughts to that, I would love to devote a whole session just on that alone.
I think we should do that. Talking about agents, it really reminds me of my favorite movie of all time, The Matrix.
Oh,
So,
so
you
good too.
know, the agents, right? So, but here's the thing. So, the Devin, right? What a name, actually. I don't know what they're trying to convey with that name. Devin sounds scary, but so it does. It is a software engineer. Does it do both the build as well as testing?
Yeah, yeah. Build testing. It can actually do deployment. So after quote unquote something is made with the assistance of Devin, it could actually deploy that as well. So not only doing the coding, the testing, but the deployment. And as I said before, if you think about, the life cycle of application development, part of it, after you do the coding and testing and deployment, it's about adapting those things. So it could actually learn, trends in the way that people are actually using the application to actually develop new skills on top of what it's already been done. To me, that's the real promise of, Devin or whatever else comes down the road. It's about not just doing I'm going to call it mundane tasks of creating code, but what can it learn from the things that it's done?
Wow, dev and tester combined, it must be really bipolar. I can't believe that, the conflict of personalities it must be having. But hopefully the tester part of it doesn't hide the bug by the
Yeah.
developer, right? The typical divide. But yeah, it's a fascinating. It did. It was another storm that I'm sure that you will be chasing soon, and we'll talk about it once more details emerge.
Yeah.
Okay, what are we talking next, Jamie?
Yeah. So I actually want to talk the quote unquote Jamie's toolbox here. A short little segment today, but what I want to talk through is an AI assistant, at least an AI assistant from Microsoft, which is known as Copilot. So Copilot is an overused term inside of Microsoft, or what Microsoft is actually promoting. Um, I don't know how many watch, quote unquote American football, aka, on our side, or what is deemed football here for us. But in the Super Bowl, which is, the biggest, at least sports game here in the United States, during the Super Bowl, Microsoft put out a commercial for Copilot. Um, and Copilot, in and of itself, when you think about what the definition is, it's about an artificial intelligence assistant for everyday productivity. What does that really mean? Well, it literally means, like, if I'm using the web, how can I, instead of just doing a search, how can I use a AI assistant that's integrated with the web? How can I use it inside of tools that I might already be using, like Microsoft Word as an example, or Outlook? So Copilot really means everything from an assistant that's tied to the web to assistant that's aligned with Microsoft productivity tools. It also means developing your own Copilots. Again, maybe that's something that we'll do in a future session. But really, what was put forth during the Super Bowl was this notion of everyday AI assistance coupled with the things that we do on a day-to-day basis, which is, browse the internet, whether or not that means you're on a laptop, a desktop, or, quote unquote, even your phone, being able to tap into, an AI assistant behind the scenes with Copilot. Copilot is based upon GPT-4. Actually, it's based upon GPT 3.5 and or 4. You could toggle that, and I won't get into all the specifics around that, but it's based upon, what I'll call it, whether or not you're using the Copilot Plus, or the versions inside of Microsoft that allow you to use GPT-4 more. Basically, it's a sliding scale. If you use GPT-4, and I'll just give this quick little example, if you're using it for an hour out of 24 hours, you can only use it for an hour, meaning that you can't turn it on all the while. But bottom line is, it's based upon OpenAI and its large language models behind the scenes, whether it's 3.5 or 4. I'll show you that in a minute. It'll make more apparent sense. But again, I go back to the point that we released, or Microsoft released, Copilot a couple months even before the Super Bowl, but Microsoft wanted to put that in the hands and make it aware to everybody at that point in time. So I'm not going to play the whole thing now.
Yeah, Jamie, that Copilot is, to be honest, it's interesting. I'll tell you that our own show, as you know, we have our logo that was actually built using the Copilot. Our theme page, the YouTube channel page, that image was also built using the Copilot. So we ourselves are actually using the Copilots, and I'll tell you, my daughter, high school daughter, she actually wanted to use the AI learning about things, and I directed her to the Copilot, and now she uses it all the time. So it's really amazing, this tool. I would say, if you're not using it, use it, because it is really handy, and we see the effect in the real world. My daughter using it, I'm using it, and I think this is the focus from the Microsoft as well. Remember, this is going to be part of this new Microsoft AI group that Mustafa Suleiman is heading now. So there will be a lot more, I think, enhancements that will be done.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot there with Copilot. And let me just, I mean, everyone just saw the video. Let me just do one quick thing and show you some of the Copilot in action. You should see my screen now. So I'm just on a regular web page, right? By the way, this web page, it's the blog for announcing Copilot, and there's another video on here as well. But on your browser window, you could open up Copilot. So here's Copilot itself. There's a couple things that we won't get too much into it in this episode, but there's the general public use Copilot. You have also a protected version through a company, which is what you're seeing here. And then you can also do something that's actually internal to the company to grab company data. That could be a whole nother topic when we talk about retrieval augmented generation, because that's actually what it's doing. Um, Again, we'll talk about that at a later date. But if I'm right here on the web, I'm going to talk a little bit in the next segment here about artificial intelligence and the history. But you could see me just put in a prompt here, and I could change. If again, I'm assuming everyone here is familiar, but there's parameters. One of them is called temperature, which is how creative it can be. So instead of just saying I want to do a temperature of 0.75, in this Copilot, I could change, like, be more creative, be more balanced, and more precise. So I'm going to stay more precise, which is kind of what I want to do when I'm asking it to give me something about history. So what you can see here, the Copilot is literally grabbing it and starting to do its Copilot, quote unquote, AI assisted things. And now it's giving me information back, leveraging the large language model to construct the answer, all at the same time providing with references on where it found that information. So, it can do its merry thing here. So this is much better than me just typing into a search engine, whether or not that's Google or Bing. This is giving me this information aligned with a large language model coupled with a search engine in the background, which is very important to kind of point out. This is not just data based upon a large language model, because everyone knows that's trained up to a certain period of time. With GPT-4 in the background, this is GPT-4 Turbo. It's trained up until April of 2023. So if I asked it something that was of, of maybe in the eclipse, we're recording this on the day of the eclipse, it's not going to know anything about April 8th. But since this Copilot is tied to, a search engine, which will bring back relevant data based upon something that's, tracked and aligned with today, it'll give me that information. So that's just a very quick example of how to use Copilot. And you can see all of the references. Some of the great things about Copilot coupled inside of the Edge browser is that I could export this out to a Word or PDF. I could do thumbs down or thumbs up on what the information was. I could also have it read out loud, the answers, and I can actually obviously copy this. But I really do love this exporting out to Word, because now if this is something I actually wanted to use with this history of AI, I could literally just export and then use it elsewhere. And then you also see follow on questions that I might want to use, like what are some of the recent breakthroughs in AI. So you get the notion here. I could start to interact with Copilot. I could obviously ask additional questions as well, rather than just using these curated type questions. So anyway, just wanted to show that real quick. It's
Is,
very, very
is
cool.
this free for everyone, Jamie, across the globe? Anybody can use it?
Yeah, anybody could use it. Like I said, I'm using something that is protected. So, a lot of the things that if someone starts to grab information, and if they blindly copy this and then send it out, and if you're using it in a corporate perspective, you probably don't want to do that. So what Microsoft actually has is a protected sense of what data that you're using. So I'm using that version since I'm using it internally within the corporate setting. But yeah, you could just use the quote unquote free version, which again, it uses GPT 3.5 underneath the covers. But even in that sense, you could toggle it to use GPT 4 in certain instances. You can't use it all the time. But yeah, to your question, this is free to anybody to use.
Yeah. And to be honest, it's available on the web and even the phone. On my iPhone, I use it. I'll tell you my own behavior, search behavior. When it used to be most of like 99% search was based on textual search. Occasionally, I would use some audio search as well. But then after this Copilot, I think majority of my search has actually shifted towards using the Copilot because I don't want to sift through all the links. I want the answer that I really just want to get on, and then in the way I want it, I can. So a lot of the search behavior have started shifting, and I would say that the Copilot Pro is actually a good tool. So thanks for sharing, Jamie.
You're welcome. Oh, and by the way, I just showed you the widget basically for Copilot. If you go to copilot.microsoft.com, it actually brings up um, the full quote unquote Copilot experience. Just for simplicity, I'll bring it back real quick. Copilot.microsoft.com. Basically, it's the same thing that you get from this widget, but again, being able to use the data, go back in terms of creativity or preciseness. But you see all the other things like, what do you want to do? Do you want to create something? Do you want to analyze? So it's just a great quote unquote AI companion, which is what this is all about.
It is amazing. Thanks, Jamie.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. So now that I showed you Copilot and a little bit out of the Jamie's toolbox, what do you got for us here today, Shadab, as far as what's in your business bag?
Oh yeah, the business bag. Yes. Okay, let me see what I have my business bag. So here it is. I want to talk about the business value of AI. So this is a frequently asked question that okay, is there a really a business value of this AI or is it just a hype? Um, what do we make out of it, particularly in the corporate world? So first of all, I will say that it is not a hype. This is not a fad. This is real because the companies have started actually getting the results. They have put that into the field, whether you go to the Expedia or Progressive or you go to any other, a lot of those consumer oriented companies, they've actually put that into the use. So this is real and this is not a hype. It also touches upon pretty much all the facets of the life in the corporate world. So whether it's marketing, sales, finance, supply chain, any function, everybody has something that they can use out of it. The question, however, remains, Jamie, and it is a tough question that how do you measure the business value of this, which is what I want to talk about today. Like, there was a study done by IDC, which is a research company, and they do a lot of these studies. It was actually commissioned by Microsoft, but it's an amazing study. It came out with a lot of different metrics and findings, and I think one of the most beautiful one that I find is this one: 3.5x ROI from AI. So it surveyed over 2,000 enterprises and it came with a lot of different findings, which I'm gonna talk about shortly. But one of this figure, this metric, is really something that hit me because as a corporate, if you have some budget available, where will you invest? You obviously want to invest based on the ROI. That's how the corporate work. If I have money today, if I was gonna invest that as a corporate in, let's say, outside market in hedge funds or the investment markets, what would I get? 10%, 5% return? That's the usual. But if I invest that into the AI initiatives, my return would be 3.5x. So it's groundbreaking because AI investments are amazing and it can really pay. So that's one of the key findings that came out of this study, and it has like some others as well. For example, a couple of like snapshots from that study, and we're going to share that link in the show notes as well. But here's the same thing, right? So for every $1 that company is investing in AI, $3.5 comes out in the return, and the 5% of the organizations are even getting much more higher return, $8 for every $1. Imagine the returns. And this is just last in like about 1.5 year that companies have started actually realizing the benefit. The other important aspect that we discovered, 92% of deployments are taking 12 months or less. There was a time when AI cycle used to be much longer actually, but now it has become much lesser. So, and in fact, 40% of organizations have actually implementation time less than 6 months. So these AI projects are far more easier to implement, far more easier to experiment, and they have really tremendous, amazing, measurable returns that are coming out. So that's what this study actually found. Some of the other interesting tidbits I would say is that 71% of the organizations are currently using AI. Rest 22% are actually planning to use it, and the remaining 7%, I think, were just lying about it. I'm kidding. They, they probably learn neither they are using it or they're planning to use it, but I don't know where they are and who they are. But it seems like everybody is using it or plan to use it.
So I got a question for you. I mean, with these great, you know, returns on that investment, yeah, the numbers that you just been, putting out there, phenomenal. What's stopping organizations from actually wanting to adopt? Is
Yeah,
it just
that's a great question. Actually, this study does
oh,
go to that aspect as well. So, the this study also actually talk about what is holding the organizations back. And you can see that this survey, the results was like generally the lack of skilled workers. 52% said that the cost, like initial entry cost, and then of course there's some there are concerns about the data, and there are genuine concerns. There are concerns about the data or IP loss or the lack of AI governance and risk management. And I would say these are genuine concerns that any organizations have. But I would also say that companies like Microsoft and others have actually taken some really concrete steps in addressing those things. So, for example, whether it's a lack of skilled worker, there are a lot of different vendors and partners are available who actually help the company. So it's no more excuse because you don't have to have it inside, right? Inside in house, it can also always be. You can always engage the others.
I guess that's a good thing for everybody that's listening to this podcast is, you're a worker at some point, and I argue that everybody is going to need to understand AI because it's going to change the way that we work, or productivity. But then there's the other side of it, which is who are going to be the practitioners, the people that are going to be leveraging and using to build new systems. So, I think if you're, that skilled worker on this, listening to this podcast, that's you. So, the, the bottom line to at least in my opinion, is that, this is going to be an area that you're going to be in high demand, which
Yeah,
is positive.
exactly. And the other thing is that what we also see is, Jamie, that there are like for everybody there's something. So there are low code tools, no code tools, pro code tools, right? Anything that you want to use. Since we are more familiar with the Microsoft world, we can always talk about the different tools that we have seen. Um, but I'm sure that every provider has those tools. So it's no more, to be honest, stopper. There are different kind of tools available. It's really about, I think, the concerns about the data, these are also genuine, but they're also being addressed. In fact, Microsoft has gone as much as far out and say that they also even will protect from the copyright breach as long as you use the models in a certain predefined recommended way, right? So there are a lot of bold companies are taking the initiative. They are going out and they're trying it, and I haven't heard any company like going completely bankrupt on the cost, or not able to see the benefit, or have entire data breached out, unless if you are in the boundaries, everything can be done. But I will also say is that beyond these things that are listed here, Jamie, what I also feel is that the things that are really holding the organizations back are something which they don't talk about. But I'll tell you this: For example, the the concerns about the employment, right? Is it going to take the job? That kind of make people afraid, and that kind of hold back, even though they will not talk about it. The politics of it, everybody wants to control AI in the organizations, and I see a lot of time it's just the politics. Those who are competent, they are not being put in charge, and those who don't really know how to do it are being put in charge. It happens a lot. It's all organizational dynamic. In my view, those reasons are also the other ones beyond this, which are also actually holding the organization back. It's time for the organizations to take a look and see that let's make it easy, let's try it out. You don't have to put the entire organization at risk. It can be done. Talk to your provider and work with them.
Totally agree.
The other thing is, Jamie, that other you can see here, it cuts across. So you can see the budget and the interest to do this comes from all kind of departments. So that's amazing thing.
Yeah.
What we find is
Yeah, I was going to say, and I've seen that everywhere. I mean, in the conversations that I've had with organizations, the interest on AI is literally every part of an organization, whether it's HR or the IT department or people in finance. Literally, it's everywhere. I think the biggest thing is understanding what is. Let me rephrase what I was about to say. The biggest thing that I believe is important is being able to succeed fast. So in any of these organizations, it's about picking a project that you could see those returns that you were just talking about, and starting out small and then gradually increasing. Um, so anyway, yeah, I could talk for a long period of time about projects that didn't work out well because they tried to do too much in a short period of time and or didn't deliver, because it was too long of a life cycle. So yeah, I agree with this in the sense that you can get huge returns. There's a lot of excitement around different parts of an organization, but it's about picking the ones that are going to make the most sense in the shortest period of time.
absolutely, and honestly, there is no excuse. Of course, we will talk about at some point what are the critical success factors of those initiatives. You can't just simply start something and then you may fail if you pick the wrong model, if you pick the wrong team. There are a lot of critical success factors you should take care. But by and large, it is far more easier. You can get things done within days, okay, weeks, literally. So that is what the power of AI. We'll talk more about it, but that was in my business back today, Jamie.
Great. Sounds good. Thanks for that. Thanks for the business bag by Shadab.
Thank
Hey,
you.
I know we're coming up to the end of our podcast here. I know we wanted to introduce maybe a new segment, which is trivia. Do you want to roll maybe one of these concepts for today?
Oh yes, the trivia. I think trivia is going to be a very exciting segment. So we will talk about we will talk about the trivia section in which we will cover, for example, kind of famous quote on the AI, right? I mean, that will convey some message. We will talk about some AI humor, for example. We will talk about some fantastic tool, some app, etc. We will talk about some questions, like a couple of questions we can ask. We will also take questions in the comments. If somebody wants to leave some questions behind, please leave your suggestions and question, and we will cover that also as part of the trivia. So essentially, a lot of tidbits, a lot of fun stuff in that section. So let me start with that. The first one, here is the famous quote, and I really love this. I love this. This is actually by Andre Karpathy. He was at that time working with OpenAI. He's one of the key researcher. Previously, I think he was at the Tesla. He has left OpenAI now to start something of his own. One of the very popular name. He actually put this out in 2023 January, right, over a year ago. But this kind of encapsulate the whole paradigm shift. The hottest new programming language is English. That kind of, here's the thing. Earlier, previously, for AI, you had to talk the AI language or machine language, right? You had to know. So that's why it was elite. Not everybody could use the data science or AI. But now what happens is the AI talk in your own language, the English. That's a beautiful part of it. You give the prompt, you do the coding in AI. So I really love this tweet because this really actually summarize the beauty of AI, particularly the generative AI.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm pulling out things that I remember learning from my English classes in high school and college, applying it to creating, you know, a better prompt that's going to be fed into a large language model. So, I can create a whole series of code just by writing out like what are the requirements, and that comes back to its English. So I can't stress that enough. I agree with you 100% there, Shadab, and obviously I agree with Andres on English. Literally is the new programming language.
Exactly. And the other skill behind this whole English is, apart from the grammar, is also the whole prompt engineering. Someday we'll talk about that as well. Very crucial aspect. Your results literally depend on the prompt engineering actually.
Yeah.
So very important aspect. We'll talk about it another time. Here is the fun part, AI humor. So I came across this LinkedIn post recently. I thought it was funny. Somebody talked about that. Okay, the biggest problem with AI is, the wrong direction of it. It wants to do all the creative stuff, but I want it to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do the art and the writing and the creative stuff, not the other way around. So funny stuff. It is also the reality, but the serious part is that AI is helping even in that as well, right? So there are robotics and there are machines which coming out with a lot of machine learning. In fact, so AI is going to be everywhere in all the
So there,
directions.
there were, there was a robot on stage, I think just a couple weeks ago, powered by GPT or powered by OpenAI models that literally did dishes. And it was asked questions at the same time of why it fed its human. I think it was an apple. I'm trying to remember, but anyway, long story short, doing the dishes aren't that far away with robotics and artificial intelligence and use of large language models.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's going to be the reality. So, as part of this trivia, somebody has asked me this before. Jamie, I want to throw this question: where did AI start?
So believe it or not, AI has been around for about 70 years. Now it depends on when you actually go back. I mean, there's you could point back to 1950. There was a project. It was actually to build a robotic mouse that could navigate, quote unquote, um, a mousetrap or a simple maze and remember its course so it could do it again. That project was called Thesis or Thesis. That was 1950. So theoretically, some of these first artificial intelligence systems would go way back to 1950. And along the way, there's been so many different advancements. There was a project called Perception Mark One. That thing is really touted as the first artificial intelligence system, or basically a neural network. It could visually distinguish cards from cards that were marked versus cards that were not, going from left and right. So that's an example of something, and that was back in I think 57 or 58. Um, but just the advancements over that period of time. There were many other things. I mean, there was. Um, I'm assuming everybody probably has heard of Alan Turing. This is thesis around can machines think, and that was back in 1950. Mark One was really one of the first computer systems that led to the advancements that we see today, and that was back in 1949. We had the Dartmouth project, and that was based upon looking at artificial intelligence. In the mid 50s, we had the DARPA project at MIT, um, and that was in early 1960s. I think it was 63. So I'm talking back in the 1950s and 1960s. Obviously, there's been a lot of advancements over the years and things that we've done around the neural networks back in the mid mid 2000s, actually 2015 or 16, things that really led to where we are today. But when someone asks you, you know, when was AI created, especially if you ask my friends and relatives that are not necessarily into computer science or artificial intelligence, they think artificial intelligence was literally created about a year and a half ago when GPT was, or Chat GPT was released. Obviously, we know that that's not correct. But again, I go back to these are things for artificial intelligence that goes back some 60, 70 years. So if you get asked that at a dinner party or in Trivial Pursuit, hopefully you'll be a little bit better educated at this point on knowing when AI, literally, started. Well, throw some things out there in the show notes if you want to do some further reads. As I said, it goes way back, and it's a lot of good, interesting reading, on some of this genesis around artificial intelligence, especially, as things progressed even more back in the late 1990s and early 2000s. So anyway, that's a little brief history on AI, Shadab.
I feel better now that I'm younger than AI now. So good to know. Yeah, it's actually funny that AI is actually has been around. In fact, I think back in several decades ago, they actually tried to call the election race in US using some of the initial machines. They kind of like predictions. So like forecasting things like that, those things have been also around, and all these things like generative AI and the deep learning and the machine learning and all these things. The AI is a vast field. A lot of things have been built over time, right, together. But it's amazing. We will touch upon these kind of things in our trivia sections as we go along. It's going to be interesting. And again, once again, just leave your questions, comments, suggestions behind so that we know what else you want to actually cover in different segments. Until then,
Signing off.
next
Thanks
time.
again, everybody.
Bye, everyone.